I know of many parents who are having children or offspring, they're not getting birth certificates for their offspring. So if they do decide to do that, how can they function in society between the public and the private without, a straw man? How can they use the benefits like
Mm.
Medicare? Like what happens there? Is it bad for them not to get a birth certificate?
But
They get a passport?
there are more ways to attain a passport than via Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade and Passport Office here in Australia. We've got worldcitizengov.org, which do a world passport, which is not from any one country. That world passport, these guys have been doing these since the 50s. And the reason they do them is based on the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights from 1948. And everyone watching goes, he's spooking the UN. No, the UN back then was not as corrupt as it is now. And actually, the way that was set up back then was done with far better intentions than what we've seen it digress to nowadays. So let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater, because back then this was actually done for decent purposes. For doing passports and ID, look, the best way to do ID is an affidavit from the mother. But sometimes paternity can be questionable. We don't always know who the father is. It's pretty hard not to know who the mother is. She's the one with the belly for 9 months. She's the one who actually goes through the act of childbirth. She's also the one breastfeeding. It's very easy to determine that's the mum. That is irrefutable to be able to, and for a mum to make an affidavit saying, well, I met my husband or my partner on this and that day. I fell pregnant around here and we gave birth at the Smith Street Hospital on this day and time to a living baby boy or whatever. That is very difficult evidence for anyone to dispute in order to help attain ID. My daughter, even with a birth certificate, we had a hard time getting her a learner's because it's the only ID that she had. So that was not enough ID. And I said to my daughter, do a stat dec. And they said, we won't accept one. So I went down to the courthouse with my daughter and we filed an affidavit each. And I took them down to the RTA and they accepted them as evidence and ID straight away because they cannot refuse an affidavit. So there are ways around it. And you've got the worldcitizengov.org. They will actually issue a world birth certificate. Now, haven't looked in for people worried about how is that traded on and where. They're not birth deaths and marriages, so I don't know. But you can get other ID documents off that worldcitizengov.org for a world passport. And then you've attained photo ID without the need of a birth certificate to get one.
And so you don't need a birth certificate then to get Medicare?
You need 100 points of ID. So you can start with something like this World Citizen Mob to be able to start to create some ID. You can have some affidavits drawn up by the mother and the father if he was a witness to the birth as well, stating what's occurred and that you're the parents and all the rest of it there. So there are ways of getting around that to be able to do that and start to create a chain of evidence and some ID that we don't have through the usual channels.
I just feel like the state can just be assholes because they won't like the fact that people aren't getting birth certificates, is even for the mother to get as much proof as she can that she had that child, because they might be like, you stole that baby because we have no record of it. I wouldn't be surprised if something like that is
That's why you have the affidavit. If you had a midwife or a doula present, get them to write something. If you gave birth in hospital, get the hospital records so that there's a record of that occurring, even if you haven't named the kid yet. There's still a record that you gave birth on this day, date, and time. And it's evidenced by the hospital administrative records, which they can't refuse when your affidavit attaches all of that as annexes and exhibits.
Yeah.
We gave birth to baby boy named John, who was alive and well, born 3:33 a.m. on the 3rd of January or whatever on, 2015. See Annexure B, hospital admission records. Yep. So you've got it all covered when you do it that way. It's very hard. They cannot refute the testimony and evidence of the mother. You carried them for 9 months and you actually went through the act of childbirth. That's irrefutable evidence. And if you've got it witnessed by anyone, like a partner, nurse, doula, midwife, doctor, whatever, they witnessed that event. You're covered. That story is now corroborated. Well, I've got photos of me with the belly growing for 9 months. Here's photos of the birth.
There's a video of it coming out of me.
Yeah, that's, it's very hard to refuse such evidence in the form of an affidavit from the mother. That's called first-hand personal knowledge.
Yeah.
You can't beat that.